morning, everyone. This is Ria Pramanik. We are continuing with our course code that is BPSC 144. That is Introduction to South Asia. So, we are learning about South Asia, and today we will be knowing about two units, that is Unit 11 and Unit 12. Unit 11, we will be starting with Unit 11, which talks about territorial disputes in particularly South Asia region. So here in this unit, we will be learning about what were the issues between the countries from this region, why they have territorial disputes, and how it is impacting their day-to-day lives, not only from the social perspective, but also their economic and political dimensions are also getting affected. So we will be learning about territorial disputes between the countries of this region in this particular unit. To introduce this unit, let's know what is territorial dispute. So, territorial disputes in South Asia continue to pose threat to the region's peace, security, and development. So, whenever you have territorial disputes in any area, there is bound to be a kind of challenge towards peace, security, and development. It hinders the development of the nation. It also jeopardizes the security, and also it uh, refrains from from having peace over that region. So most of the nation states borders were drawn during British colonial rule. So as we are learning from the beginning that the South Asian region was basically ruled by the colonial government of British, and for that all these borders that became effective after Britishers went back, after these countries got independence. So all the national boundaries were drawn by the British colonial rule, and that is one of the most important reason why the people living in this region have territorial disputes. So territorial disputes in South Asia remain fiercely fought, fragile, and chaotic. So as a result of British, drawing our borders, drawing the borders of the South Asian countries, it always became a chaotic situation. So the colonial masters' primary concern was to protect the empire's interests rather than draw a boundary to assess the region's future potential. So we should always keep in mind that the empire, the British Empire, drew those boundary lines for their own good and not for the development or future potential of the countries whose boundaries they are drawing. So this is something which we need to keep in mind. So both India and Pakistan claim Kashmir in its entirety, yet only control a portion of it. So India, Pakistan, they are fighting over Kashmir. Both of them claim that Kashmir is theirs, and since 1950, China has controlled the easternmost part of it. So there is chaotic condition in Kashmir where three countries are claiming that the particular areas are there or the entire Kashmir is there. So on the basis of a 1947 instrument of accession, India claims the entire state of Jammu and Kashmir. So the instrument of accession was signed between Raja Hari Singh and the then government of India in the 1947. And according to that instrument of accession, the king of Jammu and Kashmir, they decided to join India. So on the basis of this instrument of accession signed by the then Raja Hari Singh and the government at that time, they are claiming that the entire Jammu and Kashmir is India's. So, Pakistan, on the other hand, claims much of Kashmir's region as its own, citing the Muslim majority population as justification. So, when India got independent and Pakistan also got separated from India, Pakistan was created on the basis of the dominant Muslim areas where Pakistan was comprised of the Muslim population majorly. So, because Kashmir is a region where there is more Muslim population, so Pakistan is claiming that Muslim majority area should be theirs. Pakistan claims that India's hold and administration of Kashmir is illegitimate. So, this is what Pakistan claims, and they regard Kashmir as an unfinished partition agenda. So Kashmir is still a burning issue between India and Pakistan, and many wars have been fought over Kashmir's claim. So Pakistan's claim that territorial conflicts in the region cannot be resolved as long as it does not take all of Kashmir. So what is the goal of Pakistan? To take entire Kashmir and make it a part of Pakistani territory. So many considered the region's never-ending territorial conflicts to be one of the British colonial masters' successful strategies to keep the region disturbed. So here we can see that because of that one particular area, the countries are fighting between each other, and that is the aim of British colonial masters as per many scholars. So the British colonial masters wanted to have a disturbed region after they went back to their own place. Some newly independent nation states were forced to accept the colonial demarcation of their territorial limits as fate accompanied. So, whatever the Britishers drew at that point of time, the independent nations has to accept it, whether it was right or wrong, because they don't have any other way to demarcate their territory. So it is due to the region's tumultuous post-colonial nation building process. So these were the condition when these nation states became independent in the initial years, and how territorial disputes are still a burning issue between these countries. So, territorial disputes between neighboring countries are being exacerbated by international boundaries. So, China and Afghanistan regarded their international borders with India and Pakistan as colonial boundaries imposed by the colonial overlords. So, what China and Afghanistan claims that this is a colonial boundary. So, since 1947, Afghanistan has repeatedly rejected the Durand Line and claimed Pashtuns' self determination. So, China, Afghanistan, these countries don't believe in the boundaries that were drew by the colonial overlords. They feel that all these things were not properly done, and they don't. They repeatedly reject their idea, their boundaries drawn by the colonial British colonial rule. So Pakistan denies the claim and maintains that the Durand Line is genuine. So because of their own personal interest also, they sometimes believe that the boundaries are correct, they sometimes believe that boundaries are wrong. So Afghanistan's Pashtun claim a portion of what was once known as Pakistan's federally administered tribal areas FATA, as well as portion of Baluchistan. So there are many areas which are in contest between different countries. So the McMahon line, which runs the length of the territory between India and China, is still a point of contention. So McMahon line between India and China is still a burning issue, still very much a reason behind the territorial dispute between India and China. So China continues to claim 90,000 square kilometers of land in India's northeast, including the whole state of Arunachal Pradesh. Just imagine that entire state that China is claiming from India, and how this issue is such a big issue for the country, both the countries, because for India, Arunachal Pradesh is part of them, and to give away that territory is not to be even thinking of, like they can't think of giving that area. So these are the conditions from which the countries are going through. So now we will be learning about the territorial disputes and their meaning. So, land issues or land boundary disagreements between two or more independent nations are the basis of territorial disputes. So, you should remember this, that the land issues or land boundary disagreements between two or more independent nations are the basis of territorial disputes. So, they are the most complicated because they threaten states' integrity. Why territorial disputes we are reading today, why we are learning about it? Because it is something which is very complicated, because it threatens the state's integrity, because parties in conflict frequently allude to ancient claims of ownership when discussing the origins of territorial conflicts in Asia. So few countries want to claim that during the ancient time it was our, the land was within our territory. Now the Britishers came and they drew a different line. So these are the conflicts that is going on between various parties. So what are the factors responsible for these land, territorial disputes? The first one is the colonialism and its legacy. So this is one of the most important factor which is responsible for the territorial disputes in this entire South Asia region. So the first one is colonialism and its legacy. As I told you that the British colonial government drew the lines, make the map of this region, and because of that, still countries are fighting for their territories. Secondly, the Cold War geopolitics that also impacted the boundary lines of countries of this region. And thirdly, it is the internal politics of one or more of the parties involved. So not only the external factors that is giving shape to a conflict, but also the internal politics which is involved in this also shapes the course of the territorial dispute. So they are regarded important in understanding the origin of conflict and how they are inscribed by new meaning. So this is what the factors which are responsible for the territorial disputes. Now let's talk about the variants of territorial disputes. So all three categories of territorial disputes, as defined by Burnett and Jelly in the conceptual definition of territorial disputes, can be found in this region. So whatever we are going to study, the three categories that is defined by Burnett and Jelly, we can find these three categories are applicable to the South Asian region. The first one is the land conflict, second the positional conflict, and third the functional conflict. So let's start with land conflict. What is it? So land conflicts are when both parties agree in principle on the actual line of control but disagree on the position of the boundary line. So this is called land conflict where parties agree on the principle of actual line of control but they don't believe in the position of the boundary line. So here comes the land conflict. Secondly, let's talk about the positional conflict, positional dispute. So positional dispute happen when both parties agree in principle of the actual line of control but disagree on the location of the boundary. Thirdly, functional conflicts. It is competing understandings of border functioning are at the heart of functional disagreement. It occurs when two states dispute about how the border should be managed officially. So, when there is a boundary and two states are sharing that boundary, and there is a constant dispute going on to how to control, how to manage that boundary officially, that is called functional conflict. So these are the three categories that is defined by Burnett and Jelly, and all these three kinds of disputes or conflicts can be found in the South Asian region. Now let's talk about the theoretical explanation of territorial disputes. So how different theories define territorial disputes? So let's start with the realist thinking. So realist thinks that there is a popular theory following the World War II was the realist argument. So in international relations, we have studied that how realist perspective came into being with the advent of the World War II. So, according to realists, the states that shifting power equation usually lead to increased conflict over territorial issues. So, according to realists, when there is a shift of power equation, there is a rise of territorial issues. There is an increased conflict that can be seen. Now let's come to the Marxists. So Marxist views realism and liberalism ideas of territorial sovereignty and territorial identity as self-serving ideologies that represent the interest of the state's economy and political elites. So according to Marxists, whatever the thinking of realism and liberalism is, they are all representing the interest of the state, economy, and the political elites. So Marxists ignore and undervalue the role of the state, and they rejected the key political aspects of the international system that cause a slew of territorial conflicts between nations, including power, nationalism, and war. Now, let's come to the normative theory. So, normative theories assume that dispute territories are a source of political conflict because of subjectively established norms, beliefs, and conceptions of justice in that region. Cultural differences, national histories, and nationalistic sentiments all play a part in growing regional boundary dispute. So, normative theory believes that because of the cultural differences between the countries, because of their national histories, the nationalistic sentiments, all of these results in a regional boundary dispute. So, the dispute between India and Pakistan over Kashmir is an example of normative political narrative because there is a difference of culture, there is a national history, and also the nationalistic sentiment between these two countries are the reason behind the boundary conflict. Now let's talk about bilateral territorial disputes. So there are numerous territorial disputes prevailing in the South Asian region. Some of them are located within the areas where others are located outside the region. So the McMahon line, which separates India and China, please remember that India and China is separated by McMahon line. This is something very important, and it comes in many entrance exams and also other exams. So, McMahon Line separates India and China and is the world's longest frontier, is an example of territorial conflict that extend beyond South Asia. So, this conflict between India and China over McMahon Line, it is something which extends beyond South Asia because China is not a part of South Asia, but it plays a very important role in these territorial disputes and other issues. Bhutan and India have unresolved border boundaries with China, although Pakistan has a settled border. So, Bhutan and India have some conflict with China, but Pakistan has a settled border with China. India Sri Lanka boundary conflicts are settled, but border disputes with Nepal, Bangladesh, and Pakistan remain unsolved. So the relation between India and Sri Lanka, because of the territorial disputes, is quite settled, quite peaceful. Whether but the Nepal, Bangladesh, and Pakistan's relation with India is not that much peaceful because the issues are still unresolved. So, bilateral conflicts between adjacent countries can often escalate into violent conflict. So, because of territorial disputes, the violence can also become part of it, and the territorial issues resulted in numerous deaths in the region and became a source of friction between the region's nuclear powers. Here, in this point, we are talking about India and Pakistan, where the two countries are the nuclear weapon countries. Both of them acquired nuclear weapon, and that is also important to understand here. Now let's talk about the territorial disputes between India and Pakistan. So India and Pakistan have a number of borders claimed that the range from locational, positional, and allocational conflicts to operational conflicts. So they have all range of conflicts with them. Both countries have different perspectives of international boundaries. So both India and Pakistan have different point of view, different interpretation of the international boundaries. As a result, India and Pakistan's border is referred to as line of control rather than the international border. So, what is the name of the border line between India and Pakistan? It is known as line of control. Whereas McMahon line was the name between India and China. Do remember. In the last 74-75 years, their bilateral relations have likewise centered around resolving their disputed boundary claims. So, one of the greatest reason of dispute between India and Pakistan, the enmity, the rivalry between India and Pakistan, is over the territorial dispute. So that is why this chapter is so important to understand the equation between the countries, because territorial disputes are the reason, one of the greatest reason of conflict rivalry between the major countries of this region. So the majority of their boundary conflicts are the result of colonial legacies, as we already learned about it. Inadvertently, this anomalous boundary resulted in unresolved border conflicts between the two neighbors. So the boundary conflict still exists, and because of that, the enmity also there. Let's talk about Jammu and Kashmir first. So don't think that India and Pakistan is only fighting over Kashmir. There are many other boundaries as well, many other reasons, territorial disputes as well between India and Pakistan, apart from Jammu and Kashmir, because India and Pakistan shares a very long border, and because of that, there are many areas that are in dispute. So, the Jammu and let's start with Jammu and Kashmir. So, it has become a source of friction between India and Pakistan, as we all know that Jammu and Kashmir, also referred to as JNK, it has become a source of friction between India and Pakistan. Today, J&K has been divided into three parts, each of which is controlled by a different country. So how? So only 1,06,566 square kilometer of the original state of Jammu and Kashmir is physically occupied by India. Pakistan occupied Kashmir, also referred to as POK, is 72,935 square kilometer, and less than 5,180 square kilometer of Saksham Valley was leased to China in 1963. So there is a part of Kashmir that is on lease with China. So China occupied Kashmir consists of 37,555 square kilometer of Aksai Chin plus Saxgam and territory nibbled around over the years, all totaling up to 42,735 square kilometer in February 2012. So we can see that the majority of the land is with India, that is 1,06,566 kilometer. After that, the area is occupied by Pakistan with 72,935 square kilometer, and 42,735 square kilometer area is still with China. So, international media reportedly stated that Pakistan was considering leasing Gilgit-Baltistan to China for 50 years. So, there is also a report from international media which says that Pakistan want to lease the Gilgit-Baltistan area of Pakistan to China for 50 years. So, however, no official announcement of the agreement has yet been made. India has a line of control with Pakistan and a line of actual control with China. Pakistan currently controls one third of the original JNK territory, while China controls remaining one fifth. So this is what the Jammu and Kashmir is being divided between three countries. Now let's talk about Sir Creek. So Sir Creek, what is Sir Creek? So it is a 60-kilometer long estuary in the Run of Kutch. Run of Kutch is a place in the Kutch region of Gujarat, and it also shares its boundary with Pakistan. So Run of Kutch is located between Gujarat in India and Sindh region of Pakistan. So Indian side it is located in Gujarat state, whereas from Pakistan side it is in the Sindh region. So Sir Creek is significant because it falls between India and Pakistan's border, which has yet to be defined accurately by both countries. So there, the Sir Creek is a 60-kilometer long estuary where both of these countries are claiming that it is theirs. So the boundary line, according to India, should go through the middle of the Creek Thalwik theory. So Pakistan claims that the border should run along the river's eastern bank. So there is an anonymity between India and Pakistan to from where the place where the boundary should be drawn. So the value of this swampy terrain can be determined by considering the marshy land's future chances for locating petroleum resources and the abundance of fishes on the continental shelf. So why this Sir Creek is important for both India and Pakistan? Because this is an area where there is a high chance of getting petroleum, and petroleum is so important for a region's development, and that is why this area is becoming a point of contest between India and Pakistan, and this is one of the another territorial dispute between India and Pakistan. Let's talk about Baglihar Dam. So India proposed building the barrage, also known as Tulbul project on the Jhelum River in Sopore, Kashmir Valley. So India wanted to have a Vular barrage in Kashmir Valley, Sopore area. Pakistan regard this as a violation of the 1960 Indus Water Treaty. We will be learning about these water treaties in our next unit today only. But here, let's know that there is a Indus Water Treaty signed between India and Pakistan. And according to Pakistan, creating or making this dam is a violation of that treaty. Islamabad is concerned that it may interrupt Pakistan's water supply. So why we here talking about Islamabad? Because that is the capital of Pakistan. So there is a concern towards Pakistan that it can interrupt Pakistan's water supply. Pakistan also worries that India may utilize the barrage to control the river's flow and exploit it as a geostrategic weapon. What is a geostrategic weapon? Because of geographical locations, some countries are at the upper hand as compared to the other because that exists in a lower altitude. So that is why the flow of river is from the upstream to the downstream, and where the place which is upstream, they have an upper hand to control the water and stop the supply of water to the downstream areas. So the construction of Baglihar Dam on the Chenab River by the Indian side has heightened tension between India and Pakistan over resource utilization. Pakistan has repeatedly questioned India's inherent advantage by bringing up the issue of regional water scarcity. Let's talk about Siachen Glacier. The 76-kilometer long Siachen Glacier is one of the world's longest glaciers. So, glaciers, what is a glacier? Glaciers are the snow rivers, the ice rivers, the where there is the entire river is full of snow. That is called a glacier. So it is located in the eastern Karakoram mountain range on the extreme northwest frontier of the Indian subcontinent, just south of the Chinese border. So the US Defense Mapping Agency began portraying the Pak frontier beyond the official position in disputes over the Siachen Glacier. From a cartographic standpoint, Pakistan now owns the whole Siachen Saltoro region. So in 1979, in the year 1979, German television broadcasted a documentary called Expedition to the Longest Glacier. Since then, this location has become a battleground between two armies. So, Stephen Cohen, a well known South Asian expert, discounted Siachen as a critical strategic military location. So, there have been many news regarding Siachen wars also. So, there is always a dispute over the Siachen Glacier region. Now, let's talk about India China dispute. So, this is very important to understand. Although China is not a South Asian member of this region, but the China's interference is impacting the country, the biggest country of this region, a lot. So, let's talk about India China dispute. The world's longest unmarked border is shared by China and India. This is a general knowledge question. You should always remember that India China shares the longest unmarked border. So the territorial dispute between these two countries over the middle, western, and eastern sectors has yet to be settled. So there is an unsettled dispute between India and China. So the Chinese military's continual intrusion across the LAC, as well as the standoffs at Doklam in 2017 and the eastern Ladakh in 2020, are significant in the larger border boundary disputes between India and China. So there are continual disputes that is going on. There have been many standoffs, many war-offs between these two countries over this region. So the China claims the majority of Arunachal Pradesh in the eastern part. They claim that it is theirs. Arunachal Pradesh is known in China as South Tibet. This is very interesting to know that our Arunachal Pradesh is known as South Tibet in China, and China claims the northeastern Indian state as part of Tibet. So Chinese and Indian troops have got involved in aggressive melee face-offs and skirmishes because of these border disputes. Additional confrontations was also reported along the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh. So because they have the longest unmarked border, we can say that their disputes are also very huge. Their disputes are also because of many parts of their boundaries. Let's talk about India and Nepal's dispute. So, the border between India and Nepal is mainly peaceful and permeable with few restrictions on trade and people movement. So, India and Nepal always share a very good bond, but there is also few boundary disputes over these two nations. So the recent inauguration of the road link between Dharchula and Lipu Lake by India has reignited the breach between India and Nepal. So recently there is a road link that was inaugurated by India between the Dharchula and Lipu Lake area. So it was previously resolved in 1996 when both countries signed the Mahakali Accord. So this dispute was resolved back in 1996 when they signed the Mahakali Accord. But Nepali politicians have used the India Kalapani Lipulek disputes as a significant instrument to create a gap between India and China. So, what the aim of Nepal is to bargain with India with the name of China and bargain with China with the name of India. So this is what Nepali politics is all about, and it is in order to benefit from the rivalry between the two great powers. So Nepal is in middle, and they want to take advantage from the dispute between India and China because Nepal shares border with both these rivals. So this is how Nepal is playing its game. So Nepal is basically a buffer zone for India, a land in the middle that should be neutral or on India's side. This is what India wants. Let's talk about Bangladesh-India disputes. So India-Bangladesh border is world's fifth longest land border. West Bengal, Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, and Mizoram are five Indian states that share border with Bangladesh. Just imagine how extensive the borders are and how so many countries are sharing border with particular one country. So West Bengal, Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, and Mizoram, they share border with Bangladesh. So during the partition of India and Pakistan, Sir Radcliffe drew the border line between India and Bangladesh in haste, in hurry. So it ignored the natural barriers and socio-cultural factors while drawing the boundaries. So India considers the artificial demarcation of international boundaries to be a security risk. So because it was all done in haste, in hurry, in a chaotic condition, in a chaotic situation, so the boundaries were not properly drawn and it ignored the natural barriers and the socio-cultural factors that exist between India and Bangladesh at that point of time. Earlier it was East Pakistan. So the line divides communities and settlements and it passes through villages. So what happened is because of the hurry, what happened is it divides a single village into two parts. One part for India and one part for East Pakistan. So it divided the community, divided the settlements because it was done in such a improper way. So it is anticipated that Bangladesh's overcrowding and the two nations sharing of Ganga water during the dry season will exacerbate the border problem in the future. So there is also possibility of that. Now let's talk about India-Sri Lanka disputes. So the Pearl of Indian Ocean became known as the Island of Tears as a result of its destruction in conflict. So earlier Sri Lanka was known as the Pearl of the Indian Ocean, but later it was known as the Island of Tears. So the damage and conflict that has resulted in the ethnic cleansing of Tamil minorities is seen as the primary cause of discord between India and Sri Lanka. So, what is the reason behind the discord between India and Sri Lanka? It is the ethnic cleansing of Tamils. So, at the moment, there are no territorial issues between India and Sri Lanka. This is a very good thing for India and Sri Lanka's relation because we don't have any territorial issue. In the year 1974, a tiny alien dispute known as Kacha Thivu in the Park Strait was also resolved in Sri Lanka's favor. So, in 1974, a tiny dispute occurred and it was resolved in Sri Lanka's favor. It is when both countries signed an agreement on the exclusive economic zone in 1976, the disputes were eventually settled. So, however, the problem has taken on a political hue in India on several occasions when fishermen cross each other's territorial waters. So, not only land boundaries are important, but the water boundaries are also very important. And many times it is seen that Sri Lankan fishermen comes in the territorial waters of India and vice versa, which creates conflict between these two nations. Tamil Nadu made a demand to reclaim territorial sovereignty, and the Tamil Nadu Assembly passed a resolution in 1991 demanding Kutcha Viyu's restoration. So these are few small disputes that exist between India and Sri Lanka. Now, let's talk about Unit 12 about water disputes and water sharing. So, earlier we have learnt about how territorial disputes are occurring between the countries of South Asia and how it is impacting the peace, the development, and the growth of this region, and how these territorial disputes become so violent with time. Now we will hear in this chapter, we will be learning about water disputes. The disputes over water, over river water, over sea water, and how water sharing became a problem between these nations. So, first of all, we should know that water is life. And water resources is fundamentally challenged by increasing population and consumption patterns. So, because of the increase, because of the rise in population and their consumption patterns, water resources has been fundamentally challenged. And it is estimated that 2 out of 3 people in the world will live in water stress condition by the year 2030. So remember that it is being estimated that 2 out of every 3 people, just imagine the ratio, they will be living in a water stressed condition by the year 2030. And here we are sitting in 2023. So it is only 7 years apart. This condition is going to come. Since water resources is a lifeline for all, it is often referred to as common resource. So, because water is something which is needed for everyone, whether they belong to America, China, India, it doesn't matter, but it is a thing which everyone needs, and that is why the water resources are known as commons. All these are meant for collective use and belonging to all rather than for limited ownership. So, what happened is water should be collectively used and there is no limited ownership on water. So, these facts outline 4 broad characteristics of water. So, what are these 4 broad characteristics of water? First one is that water is the largest shared resource in the world. Do remember this, water is the largest shared resource in the world. Secondly, water as a transboundary resource remains by nature unruly and conforms to no unanimously accepted rule. So you can see that water doesn't see the boundaries created by human being. It has its own course of flowing, and that is why the water is a transboundary resource. Thirdly, states have shown a willingness to cooperate. So, because it is something which is very important for a people to live, so states have shown willingness to cooperate. Fourthly, water issues within countries determine water issues between countries. So, whatever there is a role that water plays within countries, that also determines the water issues between countries, interstate and domestic, both. So, this is what water is. Now, let's talk about the run of rivers. So, rivers are a mini cosmos spawning history, culture, spirituality, and technological interventions. So, rivers are the largest renewable water resource. So, rivers at one level are economically exploited and are value addition, for example, irrigation and power generation. So, because we need irrigation and power generation, we utilize water, rivers basically. So, at another, rivers are an inseparable part of the identities, cultures, religious perceptions of different peoples. So, river is not only for our drinking purpose, for our irrigation purpose, but it has its own identity, own. It is related to cultures, religions, etc. So, we can see that for people belonging to Hinduism religion, they used to worship rivers. So, similarly, there are many other religions, many other cultures who considered rivers as very sacred, very pious. So, rivers have drawn humans to engineering interventions such as dams, diversion, and barrages. So, with time, because of the needs that increased, There is intervention, engineering intervention in rivers, and they made dams, diversions, and barrages. Because rivers have broad based engagement, they represent basic values like equity, transparency, accountability, sustainability, and participation of the people in the water policy processes. In the first 6 decades of the 20th century, there was considerable focus on dam construction. So, dam was a part of the developmental procedure in the first 6 decades of the 20th century. By the 1970s, the negative ecological and economic impacts of water projects prompted development planners to rethink on such concrete structures and focus on maintaining watershed principles. So what happened is since 1970s, people started to know the impact, the negative impact of these dams, because it not only hampers the flow of the river, but also it is very impactful for the environment, because of the thinning of the river due to dam. Many aquatic animals died. Many areas which earlier was underwater area, that became dry now because of the thinning of the river due to dam construction. Also, another major impact of dam is the replacement of people from one place to another. So how they need to resettle, they need to rehabilitate to another place just because of the dam is being made, and that became a major concern for the policy makers. Let's talk about South Asia, which is the riverine neighborhood. So, South Asia is the southern region of Asia, which is defined by both geographically and in ethno-cultural terms. So, the South Asian region consists of Hindu Kush and Himalayan mountain ranges. Secondly, the Indus Basin in the west, the Ganga, Brahmaputra, Meghna river system in the east, and the vast peninsular India in the south. So, from all the sides, India or the South Asian region particularly can be known as a riverine neighborhood. So, South Asia has about 4% of world's annual renewable water resources that flows through several river basins. So, almost 95% of water in the South Asian region is consumed by the agricultural sector as compared to the world's average of 70%. So, because the South Asian region is basically agricultural sector, the more water is being required for agricultural purposes. So, given the uneven endowment and development of water resources in South Asia, the issues and challenges are large, diverse, and complex. Several rivers in South Asia crisscross national boundaries. This is something very important to understand, and therefore, these rivers are transboundary. Transboundary means when these rivers are not inside a particular boundary of a country, but it crisscrosses the national boundaries of many countries. So these transboundary rivers link its riparian states in a complex network of environmental, economic, and security interdependencies, because rivers are being transboundary in nature. It make the countries think about the environmental, economic, and security interdependencies. Rivers also acquire political characteristics that result in rivalries or not cooperation. So, India is the only country in South Asia that shares the rivers with all its neighbors. So, this is also a very important point to remember. India is the only country in South Asia that shares the rivers with all its neighbors, thus making it uniquely an upper and lower riparian country. So, India's water relation with Pakistan, Nepal, Bhutan, and Bangladesh are an essential component of regional stability. So, because India is sharing water, sharing river with other countries, so it became a essential component of regional stability. So, water in South Asia is also a sensitive and emotive issue, as the region's economy and predominantly rural livelihood depends on water. As I already told you, that the South Asian region is basically dependent on the agricultural sector. It is agricultural country, and a region as per se. So that is why water is an issue, is an emotive issue, you can say, and very sensitive issue between the countries of this region. Many of the Himalayan rivers are intimately tied up with the issue of territory, as the rivers enter areas where there is contestations over borders and territory. So, because river is flowing through a particular area which is in dispute because of borders or territorial demarcation, so it is also considered an important issue by sharing the water. So, for example, the Indus flows through parts of Kashmir, which Pakistan intentionally raises it as a disputed territory. Similarly, the Brahmaputra is linked with the Sino Indian border contestation in the eastern Himalayas, where China claims the territory of Arunachal Pradesh, where the Brahmaputra enters India. So, there are many issues because of the areas, the territories in dispute also have the rivers. So, that is why there are few examples we have already learned here that creates this kind of problems. Now, let's talk about the South Asia's major rivers. Because to understand rivers or the river politics or the water politics, water dispute, we should know what rivers that this region has. So, three principal subcontinental rivers originated from the Hindu Kush Himalaya and the Trans Himalaya or the Tibetan Plateau. And those three rivers are the Indus, the Ganga, and the Brahmaputra. So let's talk about Indus first. So Indus rivers flows from its source in Tibet. So Indus rivers has its source in Tibet, and after passing through Ladakh, where it is joined by Zaskar and Shyok rivers, it enters POK and then flows towards into Pakistan. The Indus collects the Chenab, Jhelum, Satluj, Ravi, and Byas. These are the five rivers of Punjab, and additionally, you should know that because of these five rivers, it is in Hindi rivers are known as Ab. So Panch Ab together it forms Punjab. So Indus collects these river waters from Chenab, Jhelum, Satluj, Ravi, and Byas, and from India before draining into the Arabian Sea near Karachi. So it is the course of this Indus River which connects Ladakh area, POK, India, and then finally it joins Arabian Sea near Karachi. Together, this system is called the Indus River system because it has water from Zaskar, Shyok rivers from Ladakh and the five rivers from currently the Punjab region of India. Now let's talk about Ganga. Ganga originates in the Indian territory, is an exclusive Indian river. One of the nine major tributaries of Ganga that flow into India from Nepal, the three principal tributaries are Karnali, Gandaki, Kosi, all have their sources in Tibet. The Ganga forms part of a larger river basin known as Ganga Brahmaputra Meghna (GBM). The Brahmaputra River traverses a large territory linking China, India, Bhutan, and Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, it is called Jamuna, eventually draining into the Bay of Bengal. Let's talk about the water and security or hydropolitics. Just a second. All right. So let's start with water and security or hydropolitics. So water issue between states or interstate can lead to dispute and potentially hostile situations, thereby affecting the political diplomatic relations. So this issue is also very important, and it affects the political diplomatic relation of the countries in this particular South Asian region. So water challenges can also impact relation between provinces within the states or intra-state. So as I told you, it not only happens externally, but it also impacts internal politics. The following points commonly emerge. So what are these following points? The first one is there is no single causal factor to water-induced conflict. Secondly, water-induced conflict is not an entity in itself, but part of complex pathways to conflict that involves political, strategic, economic, and territorial factors. There are three factors which contributes to water resources being a dispute. And what are those? The first one is depletion and degradation. Second is increased demand. And thirdly, uneven distribution of water. So, in South Asia, with growing water challenges, it is now a common national security refrain that a stable supply of water is critical to the country's political, social, and economic stability. So, we can here see that these are the problems which are giving rise to water disputes. South Asia has been it has seen several bilateral water treaties since the time of the signing of the Sharada Treaty with Nepal in the year 1920. So, because of all these conflicts over water resources, there have been many treaties that has been signed. So, downstream countries like Pakistan and Bangladesh, which are highly dependent on river waters for their well being, will be motivated to take aggressive positions vis a vis India. So, both Pakistan and Bangladesh are downstream countries, and because of that, many conflicts related to water happened between India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, as India shared water with both Pakistan and Bangladesh. So, with water a bilateral and regional agenda, South Asia is a hydropolitical security complex in which states are simultaneously part owners and part users of rivers. So, water relations can never be permanently settled. One should always know that it can never be permanently settled. The reason being that river flows are not constant. During summers, it can be very slow, very, whereas in the winters or it can be different. So because of flows are different, because that is the reason why the issue should not be permanently settled. It can definitely be causing problems for the countries. So the flows in turn are determined by seasonal variations and usage, particularly those that are non-consumptive in nature. Also, interventions and diversion on rivers impact flow. Political relations can easily be impacted by changes in the quantitative and qualitative nature of the river. Now let's talk about the water treaties. It is very important part. You should remember all these treaties. So read these treaties in detail, because water treaties are very important part of water conflicts. So there are two types of water. Uh, to know about water treaties, we should know these two types. The first is big water, and the other one is the small water. So, drinking water and water for domestic services, which constitute about 10% of the water needed, is categorized as small water. So, by small water, what we mean, it is the drinking water and the water for domestic services, whether it's cleaning, washing, cooking, etc. It is known as small water. The remaining 90% is the big water, which concerns the production of food and energy and is crucial to economic development. So, 90% of the water, remaining water, is known as big water, which is very, very important for irrigation purpose, for production of food, for production of energy, and all these things are crucial for a country's economic development. So this includes water for irrigation and hydroelectricity production. This principally forms the nuts and bolts of the water treaties. So what we are talking when we are talking about water treaties, it is basically because of the big water issue. So the basis of river water treaty is to find an equitable approach for meeting vital human needs. Water treaties in South Asia are also a barometer to gauge state behavior and political climate. So this is what we should remember here, that it is the concern of the big one. Now, there are broad characteristics to define water treaties. River water treaties are rights based and need based. It forms a dominant course of negotiation. The post treaty period issues are more need based, and examples are the Indus Water Treaty signed in 1960 between India and Pakistan, and the Ganges Treaty between the India and Bangladesh. So, both upper and the lower riparian have stakes in the continuation of the treaty. In South Asia, the upper riparian is in most cases a strong military power. So, whichever country has upper stream or upper riparian, they have more power, and in South Asian region's case, it is India. So it leaves the lower riparian to avoid uh, militaristic confrontation and emphasize the mutual benefits of the treaty. So this is what in domestic settings, Pakistan and Bangladesh, for instance, water is effectively staged an issue of lower riparian victimhood versus the upper riparian aggressor. So according to Bangladesh and Pakistan, because India is an upper riparian country, they considered it as aggressor, whereas they themselves considered as victim because they are from the lower riparian. So let's talk about the third party, which may claim critical role in the negotiation of water agreements because a mediator can help. So water treaties came into effect through the mediation of World Bank, and many times World Bank also interfered. And there are many other characteristics to define water treaties. For example, the dispute resolution mechanism. Now, let's talk about the Indus Water Treaty. This is very important as we learned that there are some characteristics to define water treaties. So, the first treaty which we will be talking about is the Indus Water Treaty. So, water is a sensitive issue in India and Pakistan's bilateral relations. So, we already know that because of the territorial dispute, these two countries are in constant conflict, constant war kind of situation. Water is also very important between these two countries, uh, which is a reason for their conflict. So after the partition in 1947, the Indus Basin was divided, and after several years of negotiation. So, Indus Water Treaty was signed between India and Pakistan in the year 1960. Please remember this, that Indus Water Treaty is signed between India and Pakistan, and the year is 1960. So, in this case, World Bank was the third party and helped in the negotiation process. So, the success of the World Bank is attributed to the US support. And secondly, the ability of the World Bank to raise funds for water development project of the Indus Basin. This treaty provided the framework for sharing of water resources in the Indus River system. So, because we already learned about that Indus River system, how it is formed, it was originated from Ladakh, and it joined two Ladakhi rivers, and then it also have five rivers from India, that is Chenab, Jhelum, Satluj, Ravi, and Byas rivers water, and together it forms an Indus River system. So this treaty provided the framework of sharing those water resources. So it divided the six rivers of the Indus Basin, and the treaty provisions gave exclusive rights to India over the eastern rivers, that is Ravi, Byas, and Satluj. So India is having water from Ravi, Byas, and Satluj, whereas Pakistan has exclusive rights over the three western rivers, that is Indus, Jhelum, and Chenab. So this is how the treaty is being made, and the water is being divided between India and Pakistan. So do remember, many time it comes in many entrance exams and many competitive exams, that which rivers are for India and which rivers are given to Pakistan. So do remember that it is Ravi, Byas, and Satluj river which is given exclusive rights to India, whereas Indus, Jhelum, and Chenab are the rivers which Pakistan has exclusive rights over them, and they are the western rivers. Now, let's talk about the Ganga Treaty. So, earlier we talked about the river treaty between India and Pakistan. Now we are talking about India and Bangladesh, which shares 54 rivers, including Ganga. So, these are described as common rivers. So, these 54 rivers are known as common rivers, and all these rivers are part of the GBM basin. What is this GBM basin? GBM stands for Ganga Brahmaputra Meghna basin. So India is the upper riparian and Bangladesh is the lower riparian. Same case with India and Pakistan as well, we have read. So the Ganga Treaty in 1996 resolved long-standing water sharing issue and has become a guiding format for the two countries to cooperate on the other common rivers that they share. So in this case, it is the Ganga Treaty which is being signed between India and Bangladesh. So for India, The diversion of surface water from the Ganga was essential for flushing of the Calcutta port and providing drinking water to the Calcutta. So, Bangladesh claimed for a legitimate share of water, and this dispute revolved around how much water is considered as legitimate, especially in the lean season when water became scarce. Also, another area of contention was the Farakka barrage, which was built in 1975, from where the water would be diverted for India's need. So, these were the treaties, and we learnt about them. And with this, I end my lecture here. Thank you.